Okay, so good morning everybody and welcome to Friday morning's edition of Lisa Barnwell Presents Bumps in the Boardroom, a global conversation on the pregnancy advantage for business. And this morning I'm delighted to welcome a guest who's currently working in her own business, who stepped out of the corporate market and created something for herself. And every day I've been mentioning a book that kind of inspired me to set up this event, and also that relates me really to the person in particular. And the book that always makes me think of Carly, and the book that I find really inspirational and would highly recommend, is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And it's such an amazing book. If you haven't read it, I'd highly recommend you get a copy, and it's a really easy little book to read. And for me, even just looking at the contents and the introduction is remove your last obstacle to ultimate success in wealth, work and love. That for me was enough to get me started. So it's something I would highly recommend. And I think it talks very much about this next person and her big leap to create the life of her dreams. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome this morning Carly Hope. Hi Carly.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome, welcome. We've got Hi Carly, you back
Hello,
on?
Lisa.
Okay, I think we're back on now. So
Brilliant.
technical things. So without further ado, welcome Carly. And I was just saying you started out at Barclays and then moved into recruitment. So if you can just set the scene on your sort of initial career path.
Yeah, so I had a career in banking for Barclays and then for HSBC. And I was middle management, so I had a leadership role, I had a branch manager role, and then went over to HSBC and had a global role, and knew that I wanted to start a family, knew that I wanted to start a business perhaps, and was just looking for more experience of something that was more like less of a corporate and more of a business, so that I was able to get that experience and launch that and had a successful career in the recruitment industry as well. And so, yeah, my skill set is, leadership, training, everything I did in the bank and recruitment was all very weighted towards sales management, sales training, and thrived in all of my roles. Loved them very much.
But what was it that made you sort of think, okay, I'm going to step out now? Because that's quite a bold move. I mean, I stepped out of my career sort of quite early on and went travelling. And, you know, my managers at the time, I was in the hotel industry. I was called into so many meetings to discuss my plan to leave. You know, it was more exit interviews than entry. And they were really concerned about why I was leaving. Did you have that sort of experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the experience that I had in the company that I left was a real concern about the fact that I was a woman, a successful woman in their organisation with a child who was leaving to explore more flexible options. And honestly, they had done what they could to accommodate me. So I was working for a global company, had a little boy. He was 1 at the time, William. Sorry, he's 4 now and he's with his cousin downstairs, so if you can hear him, I hope that adds
That's
some
okay.
fun to
We
you.
love kids. I love kids.
There was a real concern. They'd really tried to do what they could, but in many ways they were quite naive, and I don't mean that in, it's quite a strong word to use about such a successful business, but quite naive to the actual needs of a woman with a family. And I felt at the time, and we speak about Gay Hendricks and the Big Leap, and I felt as though I was living under my personal potential within the business and within my family, because I really tried to make it work, but I had to get up at 5 a.m. Who wants to do that? And I had to take my son to a nursery, and I would sit in the car park once I dropped him, and I would cry every morning, even when he was fine. You know, I'd still found it so emotional to have to drop him, and then I would go into work and I'd be catching up, and I actually was if not one of the most successful people in the office. And so I was working a 3-day week compared to everybody's 5-day week, and I was actually outperforming most of the people there. And it really was so raw to me that the amount of time that you worked and where you were sitting in the office and how you were dressed and how you were showing up, all of that was more like a corporate rule, a control in the workplace, than anything that contributed to output or performance. So here I was working less, earning more, achieving more, and so it became very real to me that I needed a way in which I could allow myself to thrive more, because I knew then that my income and my output and my happiness and everything holistically in my life could be more. And so I made the choice to go alone and start my own business and give myself the blank canvas to design a life that really worked for me.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. I mean, on this event this week, I've had a lot of calls with women, and I think one point that I really want to stress to employers, to corporates, is that women want to work. You know, women want to work when they have children. You know, they don't want to necessarily stop. Some do, and that's a personal choice. But many, many women I speak to, most of my clients, want to work, but they want to work in a way that works for them and their family. And they're not just a worker bee, they also are a human being that wants a life, that wants time for themselves, time to go and enjoy nature, time to swim, time to be happy. And, you know, I know, you know, for me, it is about bringing your whole self to the party, and then you are much more successful. And I found in a corporate environment, I was being stifled as well. They were more concerned about, was my skirt too short, or was I not looking corporate enough, when actually I was being incredibly successful as well in my role. And that is what seemed to come up when I said I was leaving, because I just needed more freedom. I needed to travel, I needed to explore, and I needed to find a way to express myself. And that just wasn't something they were comfortable with me doing, but they wanted my performance. And I think that's something, I mean, I haven't been in the corporate market for a while now, but I still have connections. And I think it's something that's changed to a degree, but only to a degree. And I think the culture of sort of presenteeism and, needing to be seen is something that, is certainly felt. And a lot of my clients have said to me that they actually overperformed when they were in their pregnancy or coming back as a new mum, because they felt there was an expectation to show up and be there and really show that nothing's changed. My output hasn't changed during this period, when actually that would be quite a realistic expectation to say, you know what, you've been through a massive transition, a massive change, or you're going through one in your pregnancy. We're okay with that. We understand that, you're with us long term, and actually your output's going to rise again. We're comfortable with that, and I think that's where real flexibility comes in, and that's something I'm sure now you've moved on to your own business with your own rules, that you've found it to be the case.
Yeah, I think going back to one of your earlier points, the business that I was working in, which is actually an innovative, in-tune business. The things that they had declined me for in the way that I was working, I know that since I've left that is now available, and so they are listening to those exit interviews.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, we're all learning together. As business evolves, the world seems to have to be changing at the moment. There's everybody is really in tune and thinking about the movement around women, and how, one of my closest friends is a director at Barclays, and when I hear her speak about the way that things are changing and the way that she's being honoured and respected and trained and developed as a woman with a leadership role, I think the marketplace is really trying to open up for how we can make it more achievable for women. But I think it has to move from being a buzz issue, something that's fashionable, something that is, if you're a woman, we're going to send you on some more training, into a real honest conversation about how do we break down the current boundaries between what is home life and what is work life and what is really achievable. And the truth of it, Lisa, and not in every business, and I really want to say that, I'm not somebody who is pro-business or pro-corporate. I believe that, or pro-family or not family or anything, and, this isn't me coming on to talk about why one is better than the other. I believe that every family, every child, every mother, every father is totally unique on their own unique path, and we have to work with what works for the person, the individual, and for the business needs. This is not about ignoring the business needs, the requirement of the business because people have children, or vice versa. And so I'm really open, but I think there has to be a really honest conversation where we break down all of the current boundaries and barriers and framework about what is home, what is business, what is a working policy for somebody who has children, who are women who are thriving in the business, and how can we help them to experience a life that is kind. Because most of the women that I know, whether they're in business or in work, have huge responsibilities. They have huge jobs, huge pressures on their shoulders from looking after their own parents and their own children and their own family and their team members, and the expectation of how they should be. And not all of them have support. Not all of them have an outlet. And I think it's really a time for us to not make the women's movement fashionable, but to make it realistic. And unfortunately, what I can see happening in the world is the fact that it's fashionable is almost putting an extra pressure. So I see people going, hey, I read Sheryl Sandberg Lean In, and now I want to be even more because it's my time, I'm a woman and I can be. But how we actually manage that, it isn't fashionable, and it isn't always pretty, and it isn't always easy. And so for me, it's this kind of honest conversation about how we manage and support women. I have 2 children, a business, I have clients, I have a home to run. Even when I have help, I then have them people to look after. And that's a very real job. It's a huge task. And so I think there's more work to do around working with the truth of what it's like to be a working mum, and not just the movement that seems to be quite fashionable.
I completely agree, and I think I thought very carefully about what I wanted to call this event, and having it being a conversation was something that was very key for me, and having an open conversation, inviting businesses and individuals and people like yourself to join in the conversation and start discussing this was really important. And I had a few clients who said to me, I'd love to talk with you, and I'll talk to you kind of off air, but actually I'm not sure I want my company to know exactly how I felt about sort of my experience during my pregnancy or my experience when I came back to work. And I totally respect that, and I totally understand the culture that they're a part of. But that's what I want to say to corporations. You need to create an environment that feels supportive, that feels honest, that feels open, so that you are open to this dialogue, that you are receiving this information. Because, as you say, when companies get that feedback in exit interviews, they do make changes. But we don't want to be always making changes after the event. We want to be trying to make them beforehand. And something exciting that's happened to me through doing some of these conversations this week is I've been invited to go and talk to some women's groups and women's networks, and I really want to start that conversation or continue that conversation, because when I'm dealing with my clients, I've been working with pregnant and postnatal women for over 10 years who are senior in business, and they do share with me the realities of how hard it is, of what's going on, of the juggling, of the, trying to be this, trying to be that. And so I have that information, and I'm very keenly aware of it, and that's what I want to bring out, and that's what I want to share, because the whole kind of superwoman perception of, there was a movie I saw with I always want to call her Carrie from Sex and the City. I don't know how she does it, or how does she do it, or whatever that movie was called. But it all kind of fell apart. And I think that's the thing, is we have this perception that we can do everything. And actually, as women, we are pretty clever and powerful and talented and creative. But we're real as well. And I've had conversations, where I've been sitting here in my shorts and running around. And, for me, it's not about sort of always how you present, always how you dress, and all the things that we put pressure on sometimes, which are really not that important in the big scheme of things. So I think opening up to being more flexible, being more real, and seeing how it is for each individual, whether you've got a partner at home who can support you, whether you've got a partner who travels, you may not have a partner at all. There's a lot of single mums who are out there working as well. So looking at everybody's situation and seeing how we can support that, I think, is something that's is really important. But from your perspective, you obviously took yourself out, you were working in the corporate environment when you had William, and then when you became pregnant with Rosa, you were much more doing your own thing. And how did you find that allowed you to go in your pregnancy and go since? She's about 1 now, isn't she? Is that right?
1 in May.
Yeah, lovely.
Yes, 2 very different experiences, and pros and cons to both. When I had William, I had a traditional pregnancy and worked whilst I was pregnant, and then took some time out and then went back to work part-time. And when I was pregnant with Rosa, my maternity leave almost started when I was pregnant, because I worked more in tune with my body. So there's times when I personally was pregnant where going to work wasn't something that was really going to serve me in that moment, and so I was able to take time out when I needed it, and when I felt good and I was thriving, I was able to work more, and I really felt that I was able to work with the pregnancy a lot more. Ultimately, I went back to work a lot sooner than I had done, with William, but there's a reason for that, and that's more that my family is really integrated with my business. And so with William, it was very separate. It was home, work, very strong split with the pressure of dividing the two. And now it's just life. And so, I went back to work when Rosa was a month old, and I took a handful of calls. And my client, had Rosa with me, and I nursed her just during the calls. And all of my clients are very responsive to me having my children with me. I mean, you can probably hear that they're downstairs today with their nanny. And, it's... But for me, I really want a life where I'm able to bring out the role of mother and all that I respect about being a mother. The World Health Organization recommends that women breastfeed for up to 2 years. There certainly wasn't an option for me to do that with my son. I'm still feeding Rosa. That's not slowing down. That's not a concern. I don't have to, go to a room and pump. Store it and have all of that headache about how accepted that is. I'm really able to make decisions from a place of how do I want to be a mother versus how does it fit in this segregated life, and what then becomes convenient because I'm spending a lot of time traveling and doing things that aren't very productive. And so the difference for the whole family has been about really sitting down and thinking about how we want to parent and how we want to raise our children versus just how do we make it work. And because of that, I'm happy at home and I'm happy at work, and because of that, I'm thriving.
Yeah, and you've got a super successful business. I mean, I've worked with you, and you're an amazing person to work with. So, just share a little bit maybe about the kind of work that you do and how that's evolved, because I think that's come about because you've had the space and the sort of freedom to allow that.
So I'm working as a coach at the moment. I coach other women in business, which obviously makes it easier for me to based on my beliefs right now, a little bit easier than perhaps if I, was going out to business meetings. But, I coach other women in business. They mainly work from home. I work from home. I've changed my working hours a little bit now as my family grows. When I just had William, I used to work 2 to 3 days a week. And now I work probably 4 or 5 days a week, but I do very short hours. So my son starts school at 8:30. We live in Spain. And I collect him at 1, and so I work then. And there's freedom and flexibility to work a week, take a week off. I don't work in August, I don't work December, I don't work school holidays. We're free to travel, we're independent of location. We can work wherever we want in the world, and we do travel. There is obviously within that, I want to paint a realistic picture. There's obviously times when I might work, I might have a day off and I might take the kids out or watch a school play or do something that was needed in the day, and then there's time when I need to work in the night. But really we're pretty flexible. The business turns over around $250,000, so obviously I'm able to pay myself a lot more handsomely from working part-time for myself than I was able to working part-time in the corporate world. And I was actually producing a lot more than I was when I was working full-time, but still my salary was prorated because I was only being paid, whilst I was sat at my desk. And so what I've had to do is think about what I want to earn, when I want to work, how I want to mother, and then go away and create that, because that wasn't available for me with ease. It was perhaps available for me with struggle, but with as much ease as is possible with 2 kids then.
Yeah. And I think for me, something I feel very passionate about is the pregnancy experience and the return to work as a new mother, and how as a society I don't think we understand that fully and we don't value it fully. And actually it's a huge time of transition and a huge time of growth as a woman to go through that experience. And something that was discussed earlier in the week with Dr. Victoria Bourne was the science behind what happens to the brain during pregnancy. And actually the left side of the brain slows down, so the cognitive function that looks after the detail and the the language and all the sort of learnt knowledge is all very much stored in that side. And the right side of the brain, the creative, the intuitive, the inner wisdom, actually has the opportunity to expand with the pregnancy hormones. And as women generally working in a business environment, there's not so much flexibility for that transition to happen. So when women work all the way up to their pregnancy, all the way up to their due date or very close to it, there's a very short time of transition, which, for a first time mum can be quite jarring and can be quite difficult. And that's, when I see women, that's what my business was designed to do, was to look after women during that time and help them decompress and transition as smoothly and easily as possible. But what I've noticed talking to women who've created a more flexible environment for themselves is that they can be much more in tune with their body, and so they can work much more. And I had a client yesterday who works at Visa. She's the PR manager at Visa, Maria Pagano, and she actually does have a very flexible working environment. She's pregnant now with her second child. And she said, I feel very supportive, and there are days when I just don't feel great and I don't want to go in or I want to work from home. And she's created a level of trust, a level of value and a level of respectability to allow her to do that. And she's got a great manager as well, which I think goes into it. But for me, it's really interesting that when you're given that space, given that environment, that, as you say, you came back to work pretty fast, a month afterwards. And actually the research says that generally your brain is not sort of back to its normal state until quite a bit later. But actually when you're working in a business, in an environment that is encouraging that creativity, that you can be incredibly powerful and incredibly valuable. And that's what I really want to share with corporations, is if you understand this process more, it can be a far greater journey, a far smoother journey for the individual, for their partner, for their whole family, for their child, but also for you as a business. That person then can bring so much more of themselves, and it's just a more productive period altogether.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous period, and some of my best work was definitely birthed whilst I was pregnant and when Rosa was very young. And there's plans that I made that haven't quite delivered yet, that will be born, and it all came from this period of really going within. I think one of the I won't to use the word problems, but I believe, in my perception, a problem in the world is that a lot of us are living on the outside. A lot of us are looking outside for success. We're looking for promotions, more money, better cars, bigger houses, losing weight. And this constant, when I achieve this goal, then I'll be happy, and then when I've got this goal, then I'll be happy, and the cogs are turning all of the time. And a lot of people I know who I love dearly, who are living that way, aren't living to their full potential because they aren't as happy as they can be. And what pregnancy can do for some women is it can be the first time in their life they've allowed themselves to go within, to tune into their body, to start to, maybe go to pregnancy yoga, or even just to sit in a moment's silence to tune in and feel their baby move. Can be one of the first times that very busy women have that experience of living within rather than outside. And when we come into our bodies, and when we start to live and move and work and breathe in a way that really serves what we need in the moment rather than what we need in 6 months, and we're living from a place of instinct and intuition, then we can start to achieve more. I was very switched off when I was working in my pregnancy because I felt like I was going through the motions. I felt like I was transitioning. I felt like the work didn't excite me in the same way it had, and I felt a little bit lost around my new identity. I had been a businesswoman and now I was becoming a mother, and what did that mean? And during all of this transition, you know, sitting at my desk doing the work that I've been doing before wasn't really allowing me to thrive. And I want to be realistic, because I know that businesses can't just say, well, if you're pregnant here, just do whatever you want to do. But actually, when my boss sat down and gave me other projects to do, something that could really use this creative energy, it was really powerful, and I had great results with it. And you know, I think what was happening for me in pregnancy was this real opportunity to explore going into myself even further. And that's a great thing, because if you manage a team and you can help your team to go within, you can help your team to go work intuitively with their body's needs, whether they're pregnant or not, whether they're female or male, then everything else can thrive in the business. Everybody can be more productive, everybody can have more energy, everybody can get more done, and everybody can enjoy the work that they're doing. And so I think pregnancy really gives us an amazing opportunity to learn how to work with our bodies and our needs.
Yeah, I so agree with you, and I see it all the time that when it works that way, when you work much more in flow, as you say, pregnant or not, but pregnant is a great time to really harness that experience, and it becomes a little bit easier. You know, everybody thrives, and I really agree that it's not just a female thing as well. You know, if you're managing a team and you can help with that self-development, you know, that's an amazing gift. And actually, something else that Victoria came up with is that your perception of facial recognition and of people's moods, people's sort of sensory perception was heightened when you were pregnant. So in a really male environment, sometimes that can be felt as quite aggressive or quite uncomfortable. But actually, on the reverse, what it does is help you have much more insight, much more intuition into your colleagues. So whereas, you know, perhaps especially in Britain, you know, we're all a bit sort of veneer and a bit sort of keeping our cards close to our chest and not necessarily expressing everything. Often, you know, during that time of pregnancy, you can be much more in tune with somebody, and it can perhaps facilitate better dialogues, more open dialogues, and that can only be a good thing for companies. And I respect what you're saying as well, is companies, you know, when they've got a structure, they can't just say, oh, you're pregnant, you go off and do whatever suits you, because that's going to cause issues, I'm sure, with other members of the team. But being more aware and saying, do you know what, we've got a really valuable member of our team, how can we embrace that? And as you say, you were given other projects that played to your strengths at that time, so that you remained and almost excelled as a valuable member of that team. And I've had that experience told to me by other clients where they've been in a very open and embracing environment, and they've been seen as somebody incredibly valuable. So their sense of worth has grown, their enjoyment of their pregnancy has grown, their health and well-being has grown, and they were able to work for longer, but in a positive way. And it didn't feel in conflict, it didn't feel as if they were one person here and one person there. And so that's what I would love to see, is much more integration. You know, we're bringing our whole self to work, and we're just much more honest and open about what's going on each day. So I love what you've shared, and I think you know, it's a perfect example. And you're working with lots of women who, you know, pregnant or not, are learning to work with their natural flow, with their natural sort of cycle, as it were, and getting different results. You know, when you're not confined to working in a box, as it were, where you've got to deliver consistently every single day of the week and every single day of the month, you find actually your output can be quite different when you take that pressure off yourself. I find I perform more when I take that pressure off myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now I'm turning over $250,000. I've got two children under 5, and done a house move to Spain, and you know, all of that's possible because of the space. And that isn't necessarily just time, it's physical space. And without that physical space, it's very hard to be creative and to perform to your full potential. If you are in a routine that doesn't work for your body, if you're getting up at a time that doesn't work for your body, if you are having to get on a commuter train that doesn't work for you, there's a lot of dense energy, there's a lot of negative thought involved in that. And when you're free to work in a way that just serves you, then you're able to just get in the flow and achieve the things that you want to achieve. Have I lost you?
Hi.
No, we're back.
Sorry, I'm not sure. I've never known my internet connection to be as erratic as it is today. But that was interesting. You were talking about physical space, and then I gave you plenty. So.
Yeah, so I was saying, it's taken space and really a way of working which feels kind to be able to achieve more. Because I believe if a person has to get up very early, and that doesn't serve their body, so I'm actually more of a night person than a very early morning person, but that's just my personal preference.
Me too.
If a person isn't working with that rhythm of when they're at their best, it's very hard. If they have to get on a commuter train and that doesn't really work for them, if they have to leave their child in a childcare situation that doesn't work for them, that's a lot of negative thoughts, that's a lot of dense energy, that's going to weigh somebody down. If they have to go into an office, if they have to wear a certain thing that doesn't bring out the best in them, if they have to do certain tasks or anything. And I'm not being unrealistic. I mean, for me, I've created a life which is all about being able to choose and do and be as I wish, and work to my ultimate performance and my ultimate potential. Again, I'm not being unrealistic about what businesses can do, but at the same time, if somebody's going against the grain of life, if somebody is doing things that don't serve them, then ultimately they end up thinking negative thoughts and taking on negative energy. And when they actually do the work, they've spent a lot of their time where they could be being ultimately productive, having these I don't want to say moans and groans, because it might not even be that strong, but anything that's negative is not serving. And so if we want women, and we do, like the world wants women in leadership roles, we want their intuition, we want their feminine traits, we want their emotional intelligence. Businesses are wise now that if their board is short of these feminine traits, whether they come from men or women, then their business will not be able to work to its full potential. And we want these women, but if we want them, we have to be clear around the fact that women have children, women have families, and if we want them to be able to have both, and we want them to be able to perform at work in the way that they can offer their fullest gifts, then they have to be able to live a life that allows them to flourish. And that means perhaps working to a routine that serves them, allowing them to feel empowered in the decisions that they make around childcare, allowing them to feel empowered in the way that they can control their earnings, allowing them to really work in a way that makes them feel good about the decisions they're making at home and at work. And when you feel like that, all of your space is allowing you to give. And when you feel as though there's resentment about any part of it, then you'll put the brakes on. And so to really maximise this movement that is so wise to knowing that it's great to have women on the board, then we have to have women who can thrive. And most women I know at a senior level, the truth is that they're succeeding with sacrifice.
Mm.
And for me, if I'm running any level of sacrifice, if I feel like my relationship's suffering or my children are suffering, then I cannot be at full potential in my business or in my work.
Yeah, I mean, that's really true. And I had a speaker on earlier this week, Catherine Parks from 3M, and she's an HR manager, and she's got a 6-year-old son. And she said what ended up giving was her sleep, time to sleep, because she didn't want her child to suffer. She didn't want her relationship to suffer. She didn't want her career to suffer. So she cut back on sleep. And so, that's not a sustainable long-term plan. So I think that's the thing. And, I know Ariana can't even speak today, Ariana Huffington's book, Thrive, talking about the third metric and saying, our health and our wellness is really important. And that's something that I felt very early on. I mean, in my career, I stepped out in my mid-20s because I just didn't feel that I was healthy. I didn't feel that I was able to honour myself in a healthy way, doing the work that I was doing. And it was important to me that was there. And at the time, everyone thought, oh, well, that's just how it is. You work and, you prioritise work, and then you've got a little amount of time that you look after yourself. And I was very much about it being integrated and it being a valuable part of what I was doing. And I saw a lovely little video recently about giving from the saucer. It was Lisa, I can't think of her surname, is it Lisa Nichols? And she gave a beautiful talk about how women, we're all about giving. We're all about giving as opposed to receiving. And we find it very hard to open up and receive. But we talk about giving when, our cup is half full or, whatever, and we're not topping up that cup enough to make sure that we've got plenty to give out. And she was saying, rather than actually giving from your cup, what you want to do is be so full, be so nourished, be so nurtured in yourself that actually your cup overflows into your saucer, and then you give out from the saucer. So you've always got this enormous resource to give out. And I absolutely love that. And I just thought, when we focus on actually ourselves and nurturing ourselves, and this is something that my business definitely focuses on, nurturing the mother and making her feel very solid and supported, then there is plenty to give out. And I think this is another thing I would love to encourage corporations to do, and I know that they are doing it. There's more focus now on the sort of out of work and the social side and health and wellness, but the more that we can do that, the more that we can embrace that in whatever shape or form it is for that individual, the more then somebody has to give, is able to give very freely and very openly. It becomes a pleasure. You've got so much that you can't help but give it away, and for me that's whether it's giving away your time, your energy, your productivity, it's all there to give when you feel nurtured and nourished. And when we're serving ourselves more authentically and more honestly, for me, that's when you can do that. It doesn't become a burden or a chore. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to do.
Yeah, and that's why, I'm so excited by what you're putting together here, Lisa, because the more women who can trailblaze, who can come forward and be in tune with their bodies and their families in the business place, the more people underneath that can see that that's okay. I think perhaps, again, to speak very generally, what we might be suffering from in the marketplace at the moment is the change in roles that happened after the 1950s, and then women coming forward into the workplace but really having to show up as men.
Yeah.
The strategy I ever saw as a bank manager was to work like, and I didn't have the same family set up now, but was to be more like the men. And to have more masculine traits, to be very driven, to be very action taking, to kind of have this kick-ass attitude. And now what's happening, and businesses are really wise to this, is that, you know, we really want women to be women. We want them to be in their feminine nature. We want the intuition. We want some of the gentleness, and we want it combined with this kick-ass action taken, so that it can be received really well. Know that this gets great results. So what we're looking for is more trailblazers to come forward, people like Sheryl Sandberg and Ariana, and, you know, people who can come forward and say, you can get these results without doing it like a man, without working until your knuckles bleed, without working 100-hour weeks. Because when we do that, all we're doing is building more women who see us as role models and do the same and do the same and do the same. And so we have a community of women living without sacrifice, a community of women living without sleep, a community of women trying to be more, trying to do more. And when we tune in a community of feminine leaders who are able to know instinctively when their cup needs filling, when their body needs more, when they need a break, when they need space, when they need to be doing different types of work, when they need to be getting different ways of childcare that serves them, then ultimately we're not saying, hey, everybody have more bank holidays and nothing happens in the economy. We're saying let's achieve more, but let's do it in a way that's really kind to mama, kind to baby, and kind to the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, it is that whole thing about, you know, for the bottom line, it will definitely improve, and women who are bringing their more feminine self to work are showing that, and I think that's what's really important. I mean, I feel so inspired now. There are some great women to sort of look at who've got much more of a balance and talk about their family being a priority as much as their career is their priority. You know, Karen Brady, strong woman, says, you know, I'm a working mother. I love my career, I love my family, and both are equally as important to me. And I think that, you know, it's a really exciting time to be a woman coming forward. I think there's so much that we can achieve and so much we can change. And I, you know, I always remember being younger and my gran saying to me, you know, you can't have it all. You can have a career or you can have a family. You can't have both. And I just, as a young child, thought, that doesn't sound right to me. That doesn't sound like fun to me. And I'm not sure I want to live in a world where it works like that. So I feel very passionate about, you know, sharing the information that I have and the insights that I have. And I think when you are in a place of confidence and a place of power, you know, femininity can be very strong. It doesn't have to be weak. And we need our masculine side to drive us forward and to take action, but to allow that creativity, to allow that inspiration to come through, you know, is very much what it's about. And I've definitely found I'm much more creative since I gave myself some space and some permission, you know, to do that. And I didn't used to. You know, I'd work from home and I'd just work all these hours just to be working, just to show that, you know, because I was working for myself, I didn't just sit about and watch TV. And now, you know, if I want to catch up on 24 and have my little fix of Jack Bauer, I will go and do it because it will make me feel better. I can assure you, watching Kiefer Sutherland always makes me feel better. And I come back to the table. I come back to the table just so much more productive. And I've learnt to allow that. And I think what I wanted to just pick up on actually was what you were saying, is also about having a support network for women to be able to show up and to allow them to pull back at those times when they don't feel so sort of strong, or they want to sort of work with their intuition and be perhaps a bit softer or quieter. You need to have a good support network to do that. You need to have an understanding manager, an understanding team. You need to have great childcare. You need to have that whole support structure in place. And I think that's something that perhaps women traditionally haven't been very good at doing, you know, asking for help and allowing help. And now as a generation, I think we're more than happy, or getting better for sure, at saying, you know, I do have a nanny, I do have a cleaner, I do have, you know, someone to help me do this and someone to help me do that. You know, I'm not a mother yet, but I have so much help in my business, you know, compared to what I used to have. and it allows me to thrive. So I think that's also a step for moving forward, of having a great team, of putting that in place very early on, because that then allows you to have that give and take, to have that flexibility when you need it, because you've got other people picking up the slack when it's needed, rather than trying to be all of that yourself.
Yeah, I think support is essential. I think if you look at the way that the world is changing, unfortunately, many of us are living in a more insular way. We might be living away from family. We might be living away from support, and so that has to be called in. And people have to, like, when I talk about having a real conversation, I think it's what I see happening a lot is that there's a lot of women trying to make out like everything's okay, and actually raising children is hard. And especially when you have a big role to play at work, a big role to play at home. You have to have that support. It might look like a call with your mum, it might look like a call with your manager, it might look like a call with your coach, it might look like a cleaner, a nanny, an entourage, it might be all of that. But it is, for it to be more acceptable, for people to say, let's have a real conversation about what has to happen in your life for you to be able to make this happen, rather than the woman feel under pressure, as many do, to come and say, this is okay, I can do it, I can make it happen, it will be okay, I just won't sleep, or I just won't do this part of my life, or I won't have any time to myself, or I won't work on my relationship. And in the end, like, it will all come crashing down, like what happened with Sarah Jessica Parker. So I think the real conversation is just about really honouring what it's like when you have children, and also what it's like for that person when they have children, because it's not the same for everyone.
And there'll be different challenges at different times. That's what I've witnessed.
Absolutely. And some people are super organised, and I'm personally not very organised, so that part is a challenge for me. And there's things that I'm really good at that I know other people aren't, and so it's that unique conversation about how are we supporting you to happen without sacrifice, and to help it make it happen in a way that you can thrive.
Yeah. And I think that just to kind of almost wrap up, but for me, a conversation is two-way. So it means it takes honesty and sort of courage on both parts to open up that dialogue. So this is saying, it takes the employee, it takes the employer, it takes the friend, it takes the partner, it takes both of us to have this conversation, and to listen as well, and to be able to listen without judgment, to be able to listen without feeling we're being attacked, or we're being run down or whatever. So for me, it is about just having these open and honest conversations, and I've loved having this conversation with you today, and I always love connecting with you, and I could talk to you all day about your experiences and the way that you're creating your life and the way that you're moving forward. And I've not known you for that long, but I've seen a huge growth. And I've loved the fact that I've really respected the fact that sometimes you've had work commitments and then have had to say, actually, my baby needs me today and I can't do this, but actually, can we reschedule? And it's been done in a very professional way. It's been done in a very honest and open way. And it's made me want to work with you more, to be honest. It hasn't made me think, gosh, oh, she's not there for every single second. So I think that's the thing, is having the courage to be honest about where we are is really important. So,
yeah.
If somebody wanted to... Sorry,
Lisa. It's like there's still a bank manager in me that is like, oh, that's flaky and it's unprofessional, and then have to rise above all of that, and you're yes, my baby needs me. That's it's so powerful, isn't it? Like, who could need you more in the world? And having the freedom to do that. I think if we're going to raise more conscious people in the world, then we have to be able to nurture them when they're young.
And lead by example. For me, it's leading by example. So if somebody wanted to contact you, Carly, and find out how to work with you or just have a conversation with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, my email is carly@carlyhope.com. You can have a little bit a look at what I do at carlyhope.com. The best way to get a hold of me is Facebook. So it's facebook.com/the sales angel. If anyone drops me a private message there, not about if you want to work with me, but if anyone just wants to hang out, always love to hear from new people. So it's great.
Yeah, well, we'll be starting a Facebook closed group, so that anybody who's interested in this topic can start a conversation and connect as well. So that's something that we'll be doing, and it's just been an absolute pleasure. And I thank you for making it happen today. I know you had, your own challenges and things for that, but it's been absolutely beautiful. There's been no issue. Hearing children play in the background is always a good thing for me. Anyway, I love it. So thank you so much for your time. And yeah, no, it's good. It's real. Yeah. It's what goes on. So but thank you so much. I've really loved the conversation, and I am very grateful to you joining me.
So welcome. Great work, Lisa. Love the movement that you're creating.
Thanks, Carly. All right, lots of love. I'll see you soon.